What's up, folks? So today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 books that I read in 2023. Now, this is just going to be a quick overview of each book and where I think they fall in this order. I plan on doing full reviews of each of these, and one of them I've already done a full review of, but I just kind of wanted to do a quick video to kind of cap off 2023. I read 25 good books last year, and I think these were the 5 best. Now, I should say that I think I could have probably done a top 5 that was entirely all Malazan, because obviously I'm incredibly biased and I think that series is the best. I figured that wasn't the best idea for this video, so I picked one Malazan book and then I picked 4 other books that I read last year. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So book number 5 was The Outcast by Graham McNeill, which is book number 17 in the Horus Heresy series. So essentially our main character of this book is an astropath named Kai Zulain. Now, an astropath in the world of Warhammer 40k is a psychic being who can communicate over vast distances through space with the use of his mind. They're kind of used as this massive communication system from planet to planet and ship to ship. But being an astropath also makes you very exposed to something called the warp. And the warp is just kind of this boundless energy that is the fabric of reality, so to say. That's enough for this video. We're not going to get into the details here. I could write a whole thesis paper on what the warp is, but that's the short of it. Kai Zulain, our main character, was the astropath of a battleship, and he goes through a very traumatic experience while in active duty. In that experience, everybody on the ship dies except for him and one other person. Now, he's sent back to the humans' homeworld of Terra, which is essentially Earth, and he's sent there to recuperate. But when he arrives on Terra to begin his recovery, he gets involved in a very important storyline for the Horus Heresy, and kind of has this really important task to take care of for the Emperor of Mankind. And really the only way that he can accomplish this task is by learning to deal with the trauma that he experienced on this ship. I thought it was really well done. Graham McNeill just does an excellent job of showing you the emotional journey that this person has to go on. And then at the same time, there's also a bunch of great action sequences. You've got kind of this great side storyline with a jailbreak that's just filled with awesome badass characters and fight scenes. And then you also get some really great lore in regards to the Emperor of Mankind, who is kind of this mystical being in the world of Warhammer 40k. And up until this point in the Horus Heresy, we have a lot of information about him, but definitely not enough to cover all of the main important things that are going on in the book. There's still so much mystery regarding this character, so anytime that he gets a little bit of exposure on page is very important, and I felt like he had some pretty big scenes in this book where you get some tidbits of information that are definitely going to become crucial down the line towards the end of the series. Honestly, I was very surprised by this book. From what I knew of it going in, I felt like a lot of people said you could kind of pass over this book in the series, but I didn't feel that way. I felt like the information that was in it was really crucial to the plot of the Horus Heresy, and I also really enjoyed the story overall. Like, as its own standalone book, it was very good and well done. Graham McNeill is obviously one of the best writers in the 40k universe, so yeah, it was just a really well put together story. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. So let's move on to book number 4. Now, I should say going into this that book 4, 3, and 2, I would kind of put them all in the same ranking, right? I think I enjoyed all of these pretty much the same amount, so you could switch them in ranking if you wanted to, but anyway. So moving on, book number 4 is going to be The Victory Part 2 by Dan Abnett, which is the final book or last book in the series as of now in the Gaunt's Ghost Warhammer 40k series. Now, I've been reading the Gaunt's Ghost for quite a while now, and I've always just really enjoyed it. It's just a great military fantasy. I love the camaraderie in these books. I love the friendships and relationships that are built between the men and women in the Ghosts. There's so many good action sequences. There's so many good funny moments, so many heartfelt moments where we're seeing characters develop that we spent thousands and thousands of pages with, becoming better versions of themselves, and some characters who kind of disappoint us in ways that we can't really predict. I thought that Abnett just did a great job kind of bringing this era of the Gaunt's Ghost to an end. And finally, in this closing edition of the Gaunt's Ghost, Ibram Gaunt, the main character, right, who is a Colonel Commissar throughout the books, constantly doing the right thing over and over again, being an incredibly courageous figure, somebody to look up to, a real role model for this regiment of soldiers. Finally, in this book, he kind of gets the respect he deserves from the rest of the higher-ups within this military organization of the Imperial Guard. In all of the books before this, he kind of just gets snubbed and thrown to the wayside. Like, they give him recognition for all of these great things he's done, but finally, in this last book, he gets the recognition he deserves. And now, with that recognition comes some new issues and tasks that he has to deal with that kind of separate him from the ghosts that he's spent so much time with in the trenches. Now he has to deal with being a higher command officer, but I felt it was the right move to kind of give him this new responsibility. It only made sense after the previous books. And the last thing I'll say about this book is that there's one particular character whose name is 𝒂𝒊𝒏, and if you've read any of these books, you know who 𝒂𝒊𝒏 is. 𝒂𝒊𝒏 is a scout in the Ghosts Regiment, and he's the best one that they have by far. In each book, he kind of has his own little short story where he gets sent on a mission or goes on a mission on his own and has to do some sort of impossible feat to help the soldiers win a battle. Every one of these is a really amazing part of the previous books. Very memorable sequences. But they were always kind of like a side story to the main storylines that were going on. It was always like a fun little addition to what was really important. Now in this last book, 𝒂𝒊𝒏 kind of gets separated from his regiment. And I won't give away too many spoilers. I know not many of you have read this series, but 𝒂𝒊𝒏 gets separated from his regiment and has to go behind enemy lines. And I think it's a very large portion of the book, like maybe 30% of the book is dedicated to this storyline towards the end. And it just gives me chills thinking about how incredible this sequence is, because this character's legend has just grown book after book, but he was never the main focal point, and then he kind of finally gets his spotlight, or the spotlight that he deserves. And it was just so enjoyable to read. I think, you know, the last sequences of this book were just chef kiss. Just, ugh. So good. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Gaunt's Ghosts, you gotta read it. If you haven't read anything in the 40K universe, this is a great place to start. Start with the founding. This book got a 5 out of 5 stars from me. With that being said, let's move on to book number 3. The Will of the Many by James Islington. Now, I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I have a full review for this book on my channel. I think I posted it like 2 weeks ago or something. I just really enjoyed the protagonist in this book, Viz. He's a great character. He's got a little bit of plot armor. Like, he continuously does these incredible things throughout the book, but honestly, it was just so well done that I didn't care or find it problematic at all. I really enjoyed it throughout. The dialogue is great, super witty and fast-paced and fun. I thought the magic system was super interesting. The concept of using other people's will in order to do special feats, I thought it was interesting and original. Some people I saw were complaining about it wasn't like properly explained, or there wasn't an explanation of like how it really worked, that it was a little bit open-ended. But personally, that didn't really bother me at all. I didn't like think about that as I was reading the book. I felt like the explanation that was given was good enough for me. There are also plenty of twists throughout this book. I felt like every time I felt like I understand who everyone was and what their goals were, things would just kind of change with the addition of some new information. And this continued up until the very ending of the book. There was a twist ending at the very, very end of the book that really just opened up some wormholes for what could be possible in books 2 and 3. I was definitely not expecting it, and I felt like it came a little bit out of left field, but hey, I'm down for it. I'm really curious to see what James Islington does in book 2. So anyway, let's move on to book number 2 in this top 5, and that would be Red Rising. Now, I have heard about this book over and over again from people who have just spoken endlessly about it, about how good this book is. And for some reason I was avoiding it. I never listened to a review that really piqued my interest for one reason or another. But after having read The Will of the Many, I had seen people make a comparison between The Will of the Many and Red Rising. And I thought, that's curious. I wonder why people are making that analogy. Now, having read Red Rising, I can totally see what they're saying, actually. And then the last reason that I read this book is because one of my friends from jiu-jitsu, actually, my friend who's a black belt that I train with all the time, we were reading 𝑀𝒌𝒻 at kind of the same time together this past year, and he would continuously say to me, dude, you gotta read Red Rising. Like, when you're done with 𝑀𝒌𝒻, take some time, take a break, and read Red Rising. And I just kept going, yeah. I read a bunch of other things this past year. But as I was getting close to the end of the year, and I think I had time for one more book, so I figured, all right, why not? I was like, let me pick up Red Rising, and then I can talk about it with my buddy in class, and he'll finally stop bothering me about it. And damn, this book was really freaking good. I think this book is better than The Will of the Many. But maybe that might be recency bias, but that's just kind of how I feel at the moment. If I had any issues with the book, it was within the first 60 or so pages. But like once I got 70, 80 pages in, I was hooked and I just could not stop reading. In a lot of ways, my comments about this book are very, very similar to my comments about The Will of the Many. I really enjoyed the protagonist, thought the dialogue was witty and smart, and at times it was funny, but at times it was also brutal. At times the actions in this book were disgusting and vile, but it was just one of those books where you get to the end of each chapter and you're like, well, I guess I'm going to stay up later tonight because I have to figure out what happens in the next one. That just happened over and over again as Pierce Brown just left us on all of these cliffhangers throughout the book. And anyway, yeah, just really enjoyed it. 5 out of 5 stars for me. I've heard that the world only gets more expansive in book 2 and book 3, so I'm really excited to move on to those. Everybody I've talked to about it after having finished the first book says that it just gets better, so I am just super pumped to dig into this new science fiction world. And look out for a full review on this coming some point soon, because I want to get into some more in-depth thoughts about this. This is just kind of a quick taste of what I've been thinking about. All right, so now it's time for book number 1. And I think if you've spent any time watching the videos on this channel and you're familiar with what I've been reading, I think you can probably guess what the number 1 book on this list is. And that would be The Crippled God by Steven Erikson. What a special book. The series as a whole is just incredible. As I was reading 𝑀𝒊𝒎𝒄𝒏 this past year, I kept thinking to myself, how is this guy gonna finish this series in a way that's gonna be satisfying? Everybody says that the 10th book is amazing, yada, yada, yada. I just read so many reviews where people were like, the 10th book, it's freaking incredible, da 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 da. And I have to say, now I'm one of those people. Even in book 9, I was like, I don't know how this guy is gonna wrap this all up, but he does. He finds a way to wrap it up. He created a very satisfying conclusion without having to tie up every loose end. There were just so many open-ended thoughts and threads that were created throughout the 10-book series that it would have just been impossible to close all of those by the end of the 10th book. So I'm glad that he didn't even do that, because it opens up a lot of opportunities for future books and future series, which obviously you can see that they've, gone ahead and done that. There's plenty of other books besides the main 10-book series. But I think he really drove home a core message in the 10th and final book that I really appreciated. Because as I was reading the last 3 or 4 books in this series, it starts to get a little bit dark, especially by the 9th book. I think a lot of people complain about the 9th book. They mention that the 9th book is not good and that there's just one particular storyline that everybody knows about, who's read that book, that's just not fun to read, and it's just very depressing as a whole. And I agree with a lot of those thoughts, but part of me feels that that's all by design, honestly. That storyline that's very hard to read is because it's incredibly depressing and sad, and it kind of brings the reader to a certain emotional state by the end of the 9th book. And I think it's really important for the reader to get to that emotional point in the 9th book so that Erikson can then do what he does in the 10th book, which is bring you out of that emotional state and then deliver a final message. I'm going to go into this in more detail in longer videos about these books, because I have a lot of thoughts about them, especially now that I've had time to sit and ruminate. And I've actually just been doing some journaling and writing about them and like what I think I picked up throughout the experience. But yeah, book 10 is just a masterpiece in my opinion. And there are certainly things that you can point at and say, oh, this could have been done this way, this could have been done that way. But just given the immensity of the work as a whole of all 10 books, just incredible how well done it is. And anyway, I'm gonna wrap up this video, but there's just one particular moment that for me really emphasized how good this 10th book is. And so if you've read 𝑀𝒊𝒎𝒄𝒏, you don't even have to have read the whole thing to kind of understand this, but it becomes evident by about halfway through the 𝑀𝒊𝒎𝒄𝒏 series that there's one particular family in the series that's very important, and it involves a few different siblings who are all on their own journeys. And so if you've read the books, you know who I'm talking about, but I'm going to do this in a spoiler-free way. I'm not going to give anything away here if you're reading 𝑀𝒊𝒎𝒄𝒏 currently. These siblings are a very important part of the books. In the 10th book, their storylines, which have been very much on different paths for the majority of the series, finally converge. There's one sentence that is said from one sibling to another. And this is the first sentence that's spoken between these characters in the series. if I'm remembering correctly, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And there's so much history at this point that you've read between these two. But then one character just says this one sentence, and then I'm pretty sure every reader's heart just shatters. I just felt like visceral pain. I don't know else how to describe it. It was painful, but it was also cathartic in a certain way. There was it's almost like there was some sort of like trauma response that happens. No, that's not the right way to put it. It was just an incredibly emotional scene, and it made sense. Like, it made so much sense in the moment when it was said, but I didn't see it coming, really. I knew there would be a reunion between these siblings, but I just didn't expect it to happen quite like that. And so, yeah, I just found it to be a very beautiful scene, and honestly just one of many beautiful scenes in the book. But I just wanted to highlight that in this video in particular, because scenes like that are why this is going to be my top book of the year and probably my top book for a long period of time. But yeah, with that being said, those are the best 5 books that I read in 2023. And if you like these videos, you like what I'm doing on the channel, you want to see more book reviews from me or other content from me, because there's plenty of other content coming down the pipe, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see everybody in the next video.